Next, we'll see about emulators and debuggers. So, what is meant by an emulator and debugger? We know that debugging is actually the process of diagnosing the firmware execution, monitoring the target process registers in memory while the firmware is running, and checking the signals from various buses of the embedded hardware. So, that is basically what is meant by debugging. We can divide debugging into hardware debugging as well as firmware debugging. Hardware debugging deals with monitoring of various bus signals and checking the status lines of the target hardware. It's basically dealing with the hardware part of the target hardware. Next, we have firmware debugging, or it is based upon the software. So it is performed to figure out the bugs or the error in the firmware which creates the unexpected behavior. So these are the two types. So in this section, we'll be mainly discussing about the different types of firmware debugging techniques available. So mainly we are discussing about 5 techniques. So let's see which are those techniques. The first one, that is incremental EEPROM burning technique. This is the most primitive type of technique. Here the code is separated into different functional units. So each function has a different code. So instead of burning the entire code into the EEPROM chip at once, the code is burned in incremental order. That is, code by code, each code is burned into the EEPROM. So each code corresponds to a different functionality. So after this, the code is cross-compiled and burned into the chip one by one. The code should also have an indication support. That is, if a code has run successfully, there should be an LED which lights up, or there should be a buzzer. So it can be anything. So there should be an indication support to indicate the successful completion of the functionality. So if we find anything is not working as per our expectation, we should fix it immediately, and only then we should go for adding the next functionality for burning into the EEPROM. So after we find that all the functionalities are working properly, we can combine the entire source code together. We can recompile and burn the code for total system functioning. As you can see, it's a very time consuming process, but we should remember it is a one-time process. So once you test the firmware in an incremental model, you can go for mass production directly. You don't need any more debugging or observing the status of firmware execution. So you'll be able to figure out at least at which point of the firmware execution the issue is arising. This is adopted in mainly small, simple system development environments where time is not a big constraint. So that is about incremental EEPROM burning technique. Next one, we'll see about inline breakpoint based firmware debugging. So here, this is also another primitive method of firmware debugging. Within the firmware, where you want to ensure that until which point that the firmware execution is reaching up to a specified point, we'll insert an inline breakpoint. So inline debug code is inserted there. So it can be a printf command, anything which prints a string as per the function. So if after a functionality an inline code is inserted, so if the functionality is successfully completed, the inline code, that is the printf, prints on the screen. So we can understand that, okay, until this point the code has been successfully completed. This is what we do in inline breakpoint based firmware debugging. Here we configure the serial communication setting of the hyper terminal connection to the same as that of the serial communication setting configured in the firmware. We can view the printf generated data on the hyper terminal here. Now, depending on the execution flow of the firmware, you can view the debug information on the hyper terminal. So this is how an inline breakpoint based firmware debugging works. Next is the monitor program based firmware debugging. Here we adopt, this is the first adopted invasive method. In this approach, a monitor program which acts as a supervisor is developed. So we need first develop a monitor program. So let's see what are the functionalities of the monitor program. It control downloading of user code into the code memory, single stepping of source code, and implements debug function as per predefined command set. So these are the functionalities of the monitor program. So the first step in any monitor program development is we should determine a set of commands for performing various operations. Okay, now once the commands for each operation is fixed, we need to write the code for preparing the actions corresponding to these commands. The commands may be received through any of the external interface of the target processor. That is up to you. Example is RS232C. So we can obtain it through the external interface like that. On receiving a command, we need to examine it and perform the action corresponding to it. The entire code, stuff of handling, the command reception, and corresponding implementation, all these together is known as the monitor program. The most common type of interface used between the target board and the debug application is RS232C, serial interface. That's the most commonly used one. After the successful completion of the monitor program development, it is compiled and burned into the flash memory or the ROM. So that is what you need to know about the monitor program. There are two drawbacks for this technique. That is, the first one is total available memory is shrunk to 64K. That is explaining this is in the entire memory map is converted. First, it was in the von Neumann model. So the entire memory map was shared between the monitor ROM, monitor program data memory, monitor program trace buffer, everything. So the original architecture supports 64K code memory and 64K external data memory. That is, it used to have 128K memory map. Now by using the 128 von Neumann memory, we only have 64K. So 128K is now shrunk to 64K. So you need to accommodate all kinds of memory requirements in the 64K. This is a drawback. Next one is wastage of serial port. The communication link between the debug application and the monitor program is achieved through a serial link, and usually the controller's on-chip UART is used for establishing this link. So one serial port of the target processor become dedicated to the monitor application. So it cannot be used for further any device interfacing. So this is a wastage of serial port. So these two are the main drawbacks of monitor program based firmware debugging. Next we'll see in-circuit emulator based firmware debugging, that is ICE based firmware debugging. So we are quite familiar with the terms simulator and emulators. They both seem confusing and sound similar. So both their functionalities are same, that is debug the target firmware. So the way in which they achieve this functionality is totally different. That is what makes them different. So simulator, in simple words, we can say that simulator simulates the target board CPU and emulator emulates the target board CPU. So the emulator hardware contains necessary emulation logic. It is hooked to the debugging application running on the development PC on one end and connects to a target board through some interface on the other end. So there is scope change that has happened in the recent generations in the definition of an emulator. In olden days, emulators were only a special dedicated hardware device used for emulating the functions of a processor or a controller. But nowadays, pure software applications which perform the functionality of a hardware emulators can be also called as an emulator. So a hardware emulator is controlled by a debugger application running on the development PC. The debugger application may be part of the IDE or it may be a third-party supply tool. So the emulator POD is the heart of any emulator system. So it contains certain functional units like emulation device, emulation memory, emulation control logic, and device adapter. I'll just give a short summary of what each of them are. The emulation device, it is a replica of the target CPU. It receives various signals from the target board through a device adapter and performs the execution of firmware and the control of debug commands. It can be either a standard chip or a programmable logic device, that is PLD. If a standard chip is used, the emulation will provide real-time execution behavior. If PLD-based emulators is used, it is easy to reconfigure those. So that is what comes under emulation device. Now let's see what is meant by an emulation memory. It is a random access memory incorporated in the emulator device. It is a replacement to the target board's EEPROM. The original EEPROM memory is emulated by the RAM of the emulator. This is known as a ROM emulation. The trace buffer, the emulation memory also acts as a trace buffer in debugging. Trace buffer is nothing, it's a memory pool holding the instructions executed or registers modified related data by the processor while debugging. Now, what is meant by an emulator control logic? That's the next part. The logic circuit used for implementing complex hardware breakpoints, trace buffer trigger detection, trace buffer control, etc., is known as emulator control logic. It is used for implementing logic analyzer function in advanced emulator devices. The emulator POD is connected to the target board through a device adapter and a single cable. Next one is a device adapter. It acts as an interface between the target board and the emulator POD. Normally, pin-to-pin compatible sockets which can be inserted or plugged into the target board, usually connect to the emulator POD using ribbon cables. DIP and PLCC are some commonly used adapters. The above mentioned emulators are almost dedicated ones. So it's dedicated for a particular purpose, for emulating a specific target processor. An alternative method of emulator design is also possible, that it supports a variety of target processors. The emulator hardware here is partitioned into two, that is base terminal and the probe card. The base terminal contains all the emulator hardware and emulation control logic except the emulation chip. The probe card board contains the device adapter sockets to plug the board into the target development board. That is about in-circuit emulated based firmware debugging. Next and the final technique is on-chip firmware debugging. The advancements in the semiconductor technology has brought this new dimension. Today, almost all processor controllers incorporate the built-in debug modules called on-chip debug (OCD). It adds silicon complexity and cost factor from a developer perspective, but it is a very good feature supporting fast and efficient firmware debugging option. Some vendors add the on-chip software debug support through JTAG, that is Joint Test Action Group port. An on-chip debugger can be enabled by setting the OCD cable bit. Here that is enabled. Now there is a brief introduction about background debug mode and JTAG interface used on the on-chip debugging. First, we'll look about the background debug mode, that is BDM. This interface is a proprietary and on-chip debug solution for Motorola. It defines a communication interface between the chip resident debug core and the host PC. It makes use of 10 or 16 pin connector to connect to the target board. The serial data in, serial data out, and serial clock are the three major signal lines used in BDM. Next one is debugging, the debugging is controlled by BDM specific debug commands. The debug commands are usually 17-bit wide, 16 bits for respective commands, and 1 bit for status control. Next, we'll talk about the JTAG. That is, the chips with JTAG debug interface contain a built-in JTAG port for communication with the remote debug application. It is also called as Joint Test Action Group. It is an alternative name for IEEE 1149.1 standard. It is a serial interface. The different JTAG protocols are test data in TDI, test data out TDO, test clock TCK, test mode select TMS, and test reset. So these are the different firmware debugging techniques. Thank you.